and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we'll meet Dilworth, Minnesota indigenous artist Christy Goulet. But first, joining me now, our guest is the president of the board of directors of the North Dakota League of Cities, Todd Feland. Todd, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
As we get started, tell the folks a little bit about yourself, maybe your background.
Sure. Well, I'm a proud North Dakotan. I grew up in Mandan, North Dakota, so I'm a proud Mandanite, and now I work for the city of Grand Forks, and I've been there for a couple decades now. I work for the city of Grand Forks currently as a city administrator. I've been there as a city administrator for 10 plus years, and prior to that I was the public works director for 12 years. And so I've had a long tenure at the city of Grand Forks, sometimes thriving and sometimes surviving, but I've worked a long time in local government, which I have a lot of passion and love for. And I really started at the city of Grand Forks after the flood, and that's how I got my start there. And I've had a really great career and lots of love for Grand Forks and local government.
Okay. Well, today we're here to talk about your job on the North Dakota League of Cities. So, tell us a little bit about how being selected as the president, and how did that come about?
Sure. Well, we have a terrific board, and the board is made up of the various regions. We have 6 regions throughout the state, from north to south, to east to west, small cities, larger cities. And, over the last several years, I've served on the board and eventually made my way to become the president. So you got to get nominated. And then at the annual meeting, you get voted in. And so I did conclude somebody's previous term. And then in September, I got another full 1-year term. So it's a terrific board made up of various cities across the state, and also elected and appointed leaders throughout the state.
Well, for those watching, listening, what is the North Dakota League of Cities?
Well, the North Dakota League of Cities really were it's a nonprofit representing cities across the state. We're made up of, I think, over 350 cities. The other thing is that we also have park districts. So within city government, we also have park districts, and really we're intended to represent cities, park districts, provide educational opportunities, and just provide general representation, research, and development for cities across the state of North Dakota.
Yeah. So when was it founded? Sort of what are the origins of it?
Well, that was a great question. I had to look up that myself. But, we were founded in 1912, in September of that year. The first meeting was in Grand Forks that year. And, it's hard to believe, 1912, pre-World War II and World War I. And so we've had a long founding of over 100 years. And it's interesting to note at the first meeting, as they say, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Really, the intent of the League of Cities being formed was to have a unified voice, and also for information sharing from large cities to smaller cities. And so as we look at what we're doing today at the League of Cities, it's almost the same of what we've done. We said we would do it in 1912. So I suspect if we're here 100 years from now, we will probably want to have a unified voice and communicate and share information across the state of North Dakota.
Well, now, I've been told and understand implementing a strategic plan is a big goal for you. Is that correct? And if so, tell us about it.
Sure. Well, we have a new executive director, relatively new, in Matt Gardner. He came from the state chamber, and so he's really reinvigorated cities across the state and our board, and so we really want to further ensure our success, and we have lots of momentum at the League of Cities, and so we really want to empower local leadership. We want to continue to thrive as an organization and really enhance our educational opportunities and our advocacy throughout the state of North Dakota on behalf of cities. So we're really engaged in that. Some of the specific things we're doing right now, we have elections coming up in June. Local elections are held in June, so we're gearing up for that, both for appointed and elected officials as we move forward, and really trying to enhance our educational opportunities. And then finally, next year will be a legislative session, so we're going to gear up for some advocacy and continue to monitor interim committees, and really get engaged with looking forward to that January of 25 and new session, and make sure that we're all engaged with our state elected officials in what we're doing as city governments.
Yeah, well, There's always challenges for any organization, but as I think about North Dakota and, of course, your bigger cities, smaller cities, let's start with what are the biggest challenges for the bigger cities, the larger populated areas?
If you look at, a lot of our challenges in North Dakota are similar probably to any town USA. We have challenges with infrastructure, public safety, workforce development. And, when I say workforce development, that includes childcare and all the things that we're working on. Challenges with, mental health, homelessness. And when you work in city government, you're really closest to the people, you're closest to the issues. And we have to face all those particular issues. And I think if you look at large and small cities, it's probably more of a gradation of what they are. I think smaller cities have those same issues. And we're really fortunate as local government that we have such a great partner in the state of North Dakota. And all those things I just mentioned, from infrastructure to public safety to workforce development to homelessness, those are all partnered solutions that we're working on with the state of North Dakota, whether that's with the governor's office or state agencies or the North Dakota legislature. We really have a great partnership in trying to find solutions in all those areas.
Yeah, now you may have been talking about all cities there, but because smaller cities have some of those same issues, I know, but what about the smaller towns? What are their challenges? What are they facing?
As I mentioned, I think they have similar issues to us, but I think they have more specific issues regarding, how do they attract workforce? How do they retain workforce? How can they find childcare? How can they keep economic development going? And, if you look at some of the larger cities, where there's Fargo, Bismarck, Grand Forks, Minot, we certainly have some advantages to the smaller communities because we have more of a wherewithal, we have more resources, and that's the power of the League of Cities, is that we really want to share and help all cities throughout the state. But because something will happen at a local government that's smaller, maybe a grocery store is really important, maybe a convenience store is really important to maintain resilience in their community and some enhancements. Whereas a larger city, those aren't going to be top of mind issues. So we really, as a part of a league, have to understand larger cities, medium cities, and smaller cities, what their needs are, so that we're meeting the needs for all communities throughout the state.
Yeah. So what are some of the services that you provide to these cities?
Number one, we want to advocate on behalf of cities and really let state government and our other stakeholders know what's going on with the various communities. The other large thing is education. And a lot of our communities really rely upon the League of delivering training, educational assistance. And then finally, really being a resource, a day-to-day resource, whether it's policy development, researching various things that are going on. That's really intended on the League. And I think we've received lots of positive reinforcement from communities across the state that we're doing a good job. But as part of our strategic plan, we want to make sure we're really enhancing that. Because, we have workforce challenges throughout the state of North Dakota and in our cities, and really the League needs to be that glue to keep our communities engaged from leadership, enhanced with advocacy and really educated, because we want everyone to succeed in North Dakota.
Is everybody, every city automatically a member? How do they become a member of the North Dakota League of Cities?
You have to be a member, and there is a fee to be a membership. We're largely a membership-driven organization, and that's how we pay the bills and do all the various programming and advocacy and research and development. But we have most of the cities in North Dakota are involved, and that's why we have over 350 cities, and that means it's just not the Fargos and Grand Forks and Bismarck, Minot. There's lots of smaller cities that really make up the League and are the strength of the League of Cities of North Dakota.
Yeah. I understand that you have an upcoming spring workshop. Can you tell us about that?
We do. We have a spring workshop, and this year it's going to be in Minot. And we're really going to focus on, I would say, really the glue of most cities are the city auditors. So there's going to be a lot of discussion on city finances and all the things that city auditors do to keep cities moving, from budgeting to reporting to running elections to all the things that they do. So there's going to be some intensive workshops on that, just to make sure we keep city halls functioning very well throughout the state. And then the other part is the elected officials. We're going to do some elected official training and how best you can do to be a really effective elected official And so those will be well timed in advance of our June elections. And so we're trying to do both, the day-to-day operation of our city auditors and also elected officials that really provide the policy direction in our communities.
Yeah. What about, can you talk about If I Were Mayor essay contest?
Yes.
What's that about? Who you targeting? Who you asking to write these essays?
Well, it's for 3rd and 7th graders. We almost get 1,000 students that submit essays. For both 3rd and 7th, I think we had well over 60 schools that participated. And really, as part of our, educational engagement, most kids who grow up to be adults, they're going to live in cities. And that's really going to be their first touch with government. And we want to make sure we capture that early. And part of the essay is, what makes their city great? And if they were mayor, what would they do to enhance and make their cities better? And so we're really trying to engage young people along the way and get them involved in city government, have a better understanding in their communities because like I said, most of these students are going to grow up and be involved in cities, and they're going to be most engaged in their communities and trying to make them better, and will have the most touch with city government.
Okay. You talked about your full-time job there in Grand Forks in city government. I guess takes up a lot of your time, but do you have the opportunity to go out and visit with other cities and talk with them and see what they're all about?
We do. Number one, we have a diverse board, as I mentioned, the 6 regions throughout the state, from small cities to larger cities. So we have a really great board. The other thing that we do, we mentioned the spring workshop that we're going to do in Minot. We have an annual conference every September 2. This year it's going to be in Grand Forks, and the city that I work in. But in June, we're going to be having 6 sessions throughout the various regions and really engaging the various regions regarding what's going on in their communities, things that we can do to improve the League of Cities, and really also gearing up for the upcoming legislative session. By June, we'll have had elections, and so really engaging us moving forward through the balance of the year. And so it'll be great to get out to see the various regions and communities, and they'll be hosted in regional communities in these 6 areas. But obviously, we'll get cities throughout the various regions, and hopefully get a really great snapshot of what's going on throughout the state of North Dakota.
You mentioned the executive director, I believe, Matt Gardner. How many staff do you have with the League of Cities?
We have 4 staff members, so we have a small but mighty and terrific staff. Matt is our relatively new executive director, came from the state chamber and has really moved us forward. He's been a great partner with other stakeholder groups and really has really moved the organization continued forward. So that's been great. We have a deputy director, and Stephanie Dassinger Engebretson, and she's also our staff attorney. So we're really fortunate not only have a deputy director, but she's our staff attorney. And when you work with various cities, a lot of cities don't have city attorneys, and so she's really relied upon to provide assistance and guidance throughout the state of North Dakota. She's been really great. We have a lady named Carissa Richter, who's our membership manager, and really is the go-to person to get things done in the organization, and has been there for some time and is terrific. And then we have Jennifer McKelkey, who's our communications and educational manager. So those are the 4 folks that get a lot of things done. We do have an engaged board, and so I would say we have more of a working board too, and that's important, especially when you have 4 staff. The office is located in Bismarck, is where the League's office is, and is really a great center point, and with a great staff, and we do a lot of things with 4 members, so we're really fortunate to have the people we do.
Mm-hmm. So, what about North Dakota's economic climate? What's it like in your opinion, I guess?
I think really we're on an all-time high, and if you look back to the pandemic and all the doubt that we had in our country and our state, and, to be frank, in our world, and, North Dakota's performed very well through the pandemic, and I think that helped us get out of the pandemic. And if you look at where we're at economically, gaining in population, I think we have a new record of population, and most of that population is in cities, which really is the economic driver of the state of North Dakota. Most of the people in North Dakota live in cities. And then the other thing is, one of the indicators of economic health is our sales tax is growing throughout the state of North Dakota, growing in our cities. And it shows that we really are thriving now coming out of this pandemic. And all the investments that we made in cities and partnering with the state really has paid off, is because we really created a lot of momentum in our state. We've diversified our economy. And I dare say the strength of the state of North Dakota is cities. And because that's where a lot of the economic activity is taking place in North Dakota, and we're really proud to represent cities.
What kind of city awards are given out each year? I understand you do some of that.
We do. We recognize both appointed and elected officials. So, appointed official would be a lot of times, the local city auditor who's been there for some time and done great work. They get recognized. Elected officials that have served and given so much of their time and energy and talent get recognized at our annual conference. And then also cities. We do have a City of the Year award, and at the last conference this past September in Bismarck, the city of Gilby was recognized. And so that's a small community north and a little bit east of Grand Forks, but they were recognized by all the Main Street things that they have done. And obviously Governor Burgum has been a big proponent of the Main Street initiative, and they really highlighted some of the great things that they're doing, from some of the infrastructure development, their Main Street small businesses they were developing, and bringing back young families to live in Gilby. And so they were recognized, and it was a real proud moment for the small city of Gilby and all that they're doing, and really revitalizing community, bringing young folks in. And who would have ever thought, a lot of times I grew up in the 80s in North Dakota, and people were fleeing North Dakota, and to be here in the 2020s and people are moving back to small communities and revitalizing, Gilby really represented that as a great story.
Oh, good. What is the Leadership Exchange Program?
Well, what we try to do, a lot of times you want a mentor, or at least, new people become appointed officials, like a city auditor, or you become an elected official, whether you're with a city council, commission, or mayor. And really that program is to align people, if they would like, with experienced folks that can provide them some guidance and some thoughts so that they can be as successful as possible. Really going back to 1912 of really the goal was have a unified voice, but that's the secondary issue was let's share information throughout the state, so that if somebody knows something, let's share that information so that we don't all have to reinvent the wheel. We don't all have to have painful experiences. Maybe there's a few experiences painful experiences we can avoid because others have gone before us. And so we're still doing that in 2024 now, what we were espoused to do in 1912. So really that's intended to get people moving forward and put them at ease that they're going to be successful and provide some guidance along the way.
You mentioned advocacy 2 or 3 times during this. How does the league lobby and interact with the state legislature?
Yeah, well, we're really the voice of city government, and we're fortunate to have really strong relationships with the governor's office, state agencies, and the North Dakota legislature. And so we're called upon to testify, whether it's Matt Gardner as our executive director, or even board members or cities across the state, about how certain policies, procedures, funding formulas will impact cities and provide that trusted word. And we really are proud that we are the trusted organization to speak on behalf of cities. We're really humbled and honored that our state government respects us, what we're doing in city government, really appreciates what we're doing, and wants to really know our values, our opinion, whether it's testifying at interim committees or during the legislative session, or just getting phone calls of how various things that they're thinking about and how that would impact cities. And we've made a lot of strides working over the last several years, working the state with various funding programs, whether that's transportation funding, water funding, other infrastructure funding. We've done a lot of partnerships with the state of North Dakota, and it's really one of the advantages that we have in North Dakota, that we can work with our state government. We have great partnerships with the cities and states. And, we're a large enough state to get things done, but we're small enough to really engage and get things done. So it's really a strategic advantage we have in North Dakota.
Todd, we are out of time, so if people want more information, where can they go?
Please go to the website, North Dakota League of Cities, or ndlc.org, and you'll find all the information. And you can always simply call us. The number's on the website, and somebody will answer the call and get you the answers that you need. And we think a lot of city government, and that's our home.
Well, Todd, we thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Stay tuned for more. Christy Goulet is an incredible Indigenous artist who lives in Dilworth, Minnesota. Self-taught, her designs include jewelry, moccasins, jingle dresses, and more. Christy's commitment to her tribal people and her spiritual journey impacts everything she does.
Wankan tonka or Shemalayo.
I'm a spirit on a human journey. I'm not a human on a spiritual journey. The art that I create is for therapy and healing. It's for mental health. It's to slow us down. Nanabaju, Wishkabiji Nabi Ikwe Indigenous cause, means to be sweet like the water woman. My English name is Christy Goulet, enrolled member of Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. I am an Indigenous artist. The art that I love to create, I like to use raw materials, which is wigwas, birch bark, pipestone. We make wazé. If you take sandpaper and rub it on the pipestone, it makes a red powder. And if you mix bear grease with that, it makes red paint. And so I love using Indigenous raw materials in my artwork. I keep a notebook on my headboard, and sometimes I'm given a very profound dream. And in my dream are specific designs or symbols on colors. Other times I'm given dreams of what family members would look like in items. And if they are given an Indigenous name, the symbolism that is shown in the dream, you can wear that as a representation of who you are as an Indigenous person. Growing up in this community, growing up in a very dysfunctional family, my mom died when I was 10, and I had 5 brothers and a dad. My dad was full-blown alcoholic. I started drinking at the age of 10. By the time I was 13, I actually became pregnant with my first child. I sobered up when I was 25. I was on the verge of a mental health breakdown, and I was scared that I wasn't sure if I could come back from it and what would my future look like. And I said, if I'm gonna help my life become better, I need to get sober and I need to acquire skills. And that's how my first outfit came together, was a fancy shawl outfit, and it was traditional Ojibwe floral design with pastel colors. And so that's where my very first outfit started. From there, you have to really kind of learn to be self-taught as well, because you have to be able to get up and acquire those skills, and practice makes perfect. One young lady who came to one of my ceremonies, who is from the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, after the ceremony, she had a dream that night and she saw herself in a dress. That specific dress, just because she was still in high school, took us a couple of months, because I have to teach them how to actually sew. How do you thread a needle? Can you measure? Learning math equations. It's very extensive for the geometry and the things that you need to understand when you're creating the dress. If you put too many cones on it, it's actually too heavy. I have wigwas earrings that I'm going to be working on. Those are going to be gifts. The people that I respected that I would give them to, they would be happier with that than something cookie cutter made, because they know that you would take the time and you put love into the item that you're making. If an Indigenous teacher teaches you, like I do the Red Willow, the Mushkwagi Dream Catchers, I've had people take my workshops and say, is this appropriation? If I, as an Indigenous teacher, offer that to you, it's called appreciation. It's not appropriation, because I'm gifting you that teaching technique, and I'm gifting you the teachings that go with making that specific item. I know that Indigenous fashion and art has exploded this year. So many good things are coming out of it, and seeing some of the younger people appreciate that. But economically, I have bills to meet and pay too. There's controversy right now in the powwow circuit because there are a lot of Indigenous people buying Chinese products and selling it. Be aware and get to know the individuals that you're supporting that are selling art or making art so that you know that it's authentic. Read labels. Some things like Dreamcatcher kits that are sold in stores locally, those come from China. They're not indigenous to Turtle Island, which is North America. So I'm always amazed at how the spirits do things, and that's why I love going to ceremony or getting ready for a ceremony or just living my everyday life, because spirit reality is pretty amazing.
Well, that's all we have on Prairie Pulse for this week, and as always, thanks for watching.
Funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. And by the members of Prairie Public.